On this episode of the podcast, I have with me Arlene Watson. She's a product and engineering leader within the cybersecurity space. She's worked at some fantastic companies such as CrowdStrike, ServiceNow, and most recently Tenable. We're going to be talking about cybersecurity product engineering emerging as a trend, and we're going to talk about, breaches, the fact that they do happen all the time. We're going to understand some of the real life problems that a cybersecurity product engineer faces. We're going to talk about how do you automate some of that, and where are the trends going in product engineering? Arlene, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And I guess, obviously, people do realize that cybersecurity is one of the top issues within any discussion in technology. But in terms of breaches, you mentioned that they actually happen a lot more frequently than people realize. Can you maybe talk about, what that actually means, that the fact that they happen all the time?
Yeah, in fact, it happens all the time. I believe, there are like a nationwide attacks sometimes gets like on the newspaper or the Twitter feed, but the reality is breaches happen all the time, and the rate of the attackers and their techniques are accelerating. Companies get breached due to phishing attacks. Sometimes vulnerabilities just weren't patched, or just systems get ransomed for as primitive issues as like weak or stolen password. But it is a reality, whether we hear about it or not. This is a real problem that happens every day, especially in the government and the commercial sectors.
Absolutely. I guess when it comes to these breaches, you mentioned, obviously we might not hear about them all the time. How concerning is it as a cybersecurity leader? How concerning is it that the breaches happen? Are there times where you're controlling that, you're allowing it? Are there times where you're viewing the breach and going, well, I really can't do much to stop that, and it's not really important? Are there cases where breaches are not going to raise those alarm bells?
The breaches actually will and should always raise alarm bells. I think when our clients sometimes that it's not going to raise huge alarm bells are like renaissance or the exploits that happens. Exploitations happening all the time. I think that's more and more common. So, that's where the preventative hygienes come into play. But the breaches means that you are basically putting the companies at risk and the underlying assets. And one other reason why you should always raise alarm bells is when you actually are like allowing breaches beyond exploitation. As a security team, typically may or may not know the boundaries of the breaches clearly. Sometimes the attackers will just leave the open door or open back door to come back for larger breaches. Sometimes you do actually get breaches where, it's as simple as your system gets locked down or you get ransomed. And one other actually more unfortunate the pattern that we see often is we used to see ransomware related attacks on like a newsfeed. Those are now more daily activities where a lot of companies just end up paying the ransom where we just don't know about it. So breaches always should raise alarm bells. The key is that you get to know the breaches actually happen timely, but preferably actually you are able to know even during the exploitation phase, and then you have a preventative cares, things like hygienes and vulnerability scanning or the security access hygienes where you are actively preventing that before you get breached.
Absolutely. Interesting. I guess when we're talking about cybersecurity, obviously you've worked for some companies where the size and scope is very large, at a global scale. Obviously, adversaries are not limited to even domestically. They can be anywhere, and the requirements are also of that scale. I guess when you look at the global factors from a requirements and adversary standpoint, it seems like it's one of the hardest things to obviously make sure you have no breaches, but also there's so many possible areas to be breached. I guess when you look at those global factors, as you know, if you were addressing a CISO, is there hierarchy of what you need to be most concerned about, or as you mentioned, a breach should always raise alarm bells. Is there a case where all breaches are equal in that case on a global scale?
There are definitely hierarchies. Typically, a lot of the organizations should have a basically identification of what are the high value assets. Those can be what are critical for that organization to sustain. A lot of times attackers go after things like financial information or something that are critical for public organization to their shareholders, or something that just damages the reputation of the company. So those are more, we call it typically like an asset criticality, right? So also another like a huge investment that happens is a CMDB, right? Where you can actually understand what assets and the value of those assets and criticality of those assets. Now, another aspects that got introduced with the digitalization, also the cloud, that are externally exposed assets. Those can be also looked at as higher priority in higher criticality in terms of the attack surfaces and needing to pay attention for preventative security. We also call that proactive security. So definitely hierarchy. Also, we talk a lot about AI, right? So I saw a lot of topics about the AI in your show. That also extends the attack surfaces and the techniques that related to data. Now the data becomes more accessible through many open source or commercial, large language models that people are fan of, accessible through API. So really securing those data assets from the public all the way to right access level. So definitely there are hierarchies, and the attackers will likely start from where easily it can be penetrated, but go after what you perceived as the highest value of the asset that can become most damaging if it is breached.
I mean, I think that's a great explanation as well. And you mentioned that a lot of times CISOs, due to staff shortages, budgets, or whatever it is, a lot of times it is slightly more defensive. I know the notion of trying to be offensive is something that most CISOs are trying to gravitate towards, but that requires some either additional resources, it requires time, it requires something. You mentioned that automation, right? If something's repeatable and automating it, that could be a path for CISOs to focus more on offensive security. Can you maybe go into that and talk to us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that's actually the pretty big topics in the cyber product and engineering, folks' mind. Someone like myself and a lot of my peers get involved. So when you actually look at the days in life of the security engineers, they can be SOC engineers or InfoSec or red team and blue team or someone in CISO's office. A lot of tasks are repeatable, and they're depending on the domain. For example, we talk often about the vulnerability management, how it hasn't been evolved really since the 80s, where it just still takes a lot of manual exercise. If you look at actually the days in life of the SOC engineer, what they have to do from all the way to the initial alert, all the way to basically remediation and closing that the SOC engineer's task, a lot of them are repeatable. The trend that we see, and I see it quite often, is the CISOs no longer, especially those CISOs who have been breached in the recent years, have appetite for just those manual work to be forever done manually. So I hear often also, they're growing, attack surfaces with the cloud and AI and data and all the things that we talked about. also growing the sophistication of the attackers, especially using, the techniques that, I use all the time in my team for building products. Also, those get used by attackers. And then thirdly, the CISOs are not getting a commonly increased budget, right, to secure those growing attack surfaces and attackers. So I hear, if it is repeatable, CISOs are looking for solutions that automates them. So the security teams within the organization can now go after what actually requires for, expert humans to do, right? And the products such as, the companies that you mentioned that I've been involved in helps automating those repeatable tasks. So the security engineers are more focused on things that are like we mentioned, offensive security. Basically go pen testing on the network layers or the data layers or the highly critical assets for stopping breaches more so than just scanning millions of assets every day, going through ticketing and remediation tests that can be automated. So automation is a big theme, and doing more with less is a big theme. And hence, that is also where, I see a lot of product trend going, as well as, just technical innovation itself.
I'd like to ask you a question, and this is something that I've asked before, and I'm not sure that I just 100% always understand this, and I love your view. Cybersecurity budgets are more limited, right? They don't have the biggest budget. I think if you compare it to, budgets, I think cloud is bigger, data and AI is bigger, cybersecurity ranks lower. In terms of priority, you always hear about the initiative being top 2 or 3 in the mind of every technology executive, but when it comes to the budget, it's not reconciled to the priority level. And I'm curious, maybe if you can expand on that gap.
That is actually really true reality, right? And the security budgets actually in many companies I've seen shrinking. And when it goes to, becoming a priority in terms of the budget allocation, unfortunately, a lot of times you get breached. So now you realize, okay, the cyber threat is real, and there is actually investment going up, not necessarily because the initiatives that are, just grassroots important, but more of a reaction to the breaches and actually after that. And those are unfortunate cases. I believe I've been in cybersecurity domain for quite some time. There's also a huge difference in terms of before the cloud era and the post-cloud era, right? So when people used to run things in the data center versus now the cloud is everywhere, right? So just things just spin up in a second without security team knowing, right? So that itself, initially there were a huge skill set gap, right, in the security team's ability to catch up. Now I think the AI is actually starting to show the similar problems of the skill set catch up. So unfortunately, I think there are more cases where the organizations end up getting breached, and then that invokes the increase of the focus and budgets and investment into security. We don't recommend that, right? We definitely want to see the security teams and the organizations proactively catching up with the adversary markets, the technology innovation that also opens the door for attackers, and then proactively planning and looking at techniques and skill sets and processes with the governances. So before they get breached, there's a proper investment and processes in place, so it does not, result in the negative consequences of the clients and organizations.
It's an interesting, obviously, I appreciate your viewpoint, and it makes a lot of sense why that is the case. Completely can understand that. And I guess if you were to kind of, you touched on the advent of AI and sheer amount of surface area that has expanded, right? Before the cloud, even, you had a certain amount of security things to consider. With the growth of AI and generative AI technologies, How big does the security surface area get? I guess if you could expand on that, that'd be great.
The AI actually, I think it touches the exponential growth. So a lot of times, people hear AI as in something that is super automated, super smart, and super fast. But when it comes to actually the cyber world, it touches on pretty much all attack surfaces that we know about and more, right? So it touches on a lot of the chatbots, the web interfaces. Like there are huge attack surfaces around the OWASP top 10. Now OWASP has an OWASP top 10 LMM, because all the the attacks through the web applications and web forms now available through chatbots still applies in AI, and it gets even worse, right? And things like API security, things like identity access security, things like sensitive data and the governance around it. So it's actually times two, but then you now have machine learning, like self-teaching the techniques. So the attack surfaces and the growth of the risks that the AI introduce, I believe is going to be exponential, and the just sheer the adoption, right? The excitement and adoption of the AI technologies that we see throughout the multiple cross industries, I think that's going to also make the attack surfaces grow exponential. Hence, the CISOs now have a new challenges of preparing for what that means and what potential breaches that can happen. I see a lot of companies started focusing on the data protection, data governance, and data security, but I don't think it just stops at the data, because the application of agentic AI now, it can be through many different medium, right? It can be, apps on your phone. It can be on your, software, desktop software, or the web software, SaaS network. So it's actually exponential. I think it's going to only grow faster.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to somebody who their company protects the kernel OS, and he mentioned that there could be AI that is sending false log data, and based on the log data, it will affect systems. And that blew my mind, because that was when I kind of it dawned on me that the attack surface area is, I mean, exponential is absolutely the right term. And if before CISOs, had a limited budget to stop X amount of breaches, now they need to move into an area where they're responsible for even more unknowns. And I guess maybe this is where AI within cybersecurity is interesting, is and obviously from the product engineering standpoint, you've been in this space for a long time. When you think about AI to counteract the adversarial AI components, AIs battling AIs, is that a real solution? Are we going to be able to learn? Is the AI going to be able to move at a fast enough speed to stay close in step with the adversarial components?
I think it will definitely accelerate also the defense technology in the cyber world, for sure. I have been in a lot of folks I work with have been involved in many advanced techniques to basically, catch the abnormal behaviors, right? Or things that are very difficult and time consuming to catch in the pattern perspective, heuristically through more dynamic, like a neural network, or, which is a large language model is based on. But here is like an important fact, right? That I think a lot of folks who's been in the cyber world will deeply appreciate. You can never say that you know where the adversary is heading next, right? So the job of the someone like myself and a lot of folks involved in the cybersecurity product development, we always know that. Like the moment somebody says, "I know all the adversaries is that's going to happen tomorrow," we know that is not the fact. That's just the nature of our what we do, right? We chase unknown, and what we can do the best is prepare for it. So for that reason, yes, we are absolutely focused and invested in the AI-driven cyber defense technology. It will tremendously help for us to innovate and grow faster rate for being able to predict unknown behavior of the attackers and the exploitations that's happening in the wild. Can I say that, you will be 100% that we will know where the adversaries are heading next and being able to prepare for it? Answer is unfortunately no. And that is just the nature of building the cybersecurity products.
Absolutely. Yeah, it seems, when I sometimes think about this or talk to CISOs to be on the show, it blows my mind how much more complex the job is getting in some ways. And I guess if you were to kind of look at, you've been on the side of building some of these solutions, and obviously cybersecurity product engineering, being really close to the customer, really understanding what to build. And maybe a final question that would be interesting to talk about is, as someone building these tools, obviously I know there's big teams, so I'm not saying you make all the decisions, but you're responsible for execution, prioritizing your roadmap and understanding the real problems being solved. Can you maybe talk about that gap as the software side, as the software development side?
Yeah. So on the software development side, you are absolutely right. Prioritization is becoming more and more important, right? It just we talked about a lot of the growth of the attack surfaces, attackers, and their techniques. The demand of the features is, it's just unbelievable amount of the demand. The prioritization in the product and engineering side, building the cyber defense product, it definitely, I think every leaders, if you interview may have a different approaches, but my personal belief is it has to help the real life problems when the product gets used by our clients. So sometimes that means that we just got to get the basics right? So, for example, I always focus on the building the foundation correctly and then building on top. So a lot of the cyber companies are after using AI techniques we just talked about a few minutes ago, right? But prioritization wise, building a foundation, what that means is sometimes it can be data quality, right? Do we actually have a good data quality when we actually look at the data, and then before we put like advanced techniques, either that can be machine learning or data analytics or detection techniques that we use in the various means, just getting the basics done right and then being able to actually qualify that. And, what's most important for someone like myself is being able to stand in front of our large clients who are running global business, relying on the product that, I or my team develop, being able to say, that we can guarantee that this data is correct. And when the product shows certain risks, certain attacks, certain breaches, this is something that we can 100% represent to you as it's real, it's a quality. And then you go into the, rest of the prioritization. But beyond foundation, I want to say the next biggest prioritization in pattern is automation, right? Automate in a way that things that used to take days or hours for our security audiences to do using our product, they don't have to, spend any time on it. So automation is a big theme. Another big theme in the prioritization is integration. So, there has been a many evolution of the cyber security product world. Gartner contributed heavily by coming up with a lot of different domains. The consolidation on top of the automation, basically customers don't have to go to cloud product to secure cloud products, identity product to secure identity, or AI product to secure AI, but consolidate as in a platform where it does not really matter, right, where the attack surfaces are, where the breaches happen, by driving from the platform consolidated products to actually secure their attack surfaces. Those are another priorities that we are working toward.
Fantastic. Arlene, love the discussion. I know these are this is a subject where we could keep going and finding nuances to keep talking about it. I know you got to get back to it. If somebody wants to reach out to you to connect with you, discuss the topic further, what is a good way of doing that?
Yeah, just DM me on LinkedIn. You can find me under Arlene Watson, and happy to chat.
Okay, awesome. We'll make sure to include that in the show notes. Again, thank you for being on the show. And that's it for this episode. Be back again, different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, I think we covered a lot of ground with Arlene. We talked about the emerging problems, about breaches that happen all the time, prioritizing your security, and as well the automation side and where software development's going to address some of these issues. And the attack surface area has, as she said, grown exponentially. So plenty to talk about. And please share this episode with somebody else who might benefit from it. I'd appreciate that. Also, like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how the show's going for you. Love to hear from you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.